Jake is going to be up to his elbows in thorium grease. Vinod plays with sharp objects, and Dax did crazy rope stuff with a Hopi. Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton. We're also joined by Malissa Longo, very special guest. My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are reviewing Season 2, Episode 15 of Deep Space Nine called Paradise. How you guys doing today?
Good.
Yeah, doing all right. Doing all right. You got me stunned right there with the Solorian elbow grease or something like that. It was nowhere in my notes for this episode. So
Really?
I'm thinking, what is going on here?
You didn't notice? By the way, I've been doing something secretly for the last few weeks. I call it NAM. It's non-appearance mentions. And that's because we kind of talked about, you and I, we've spoken before that people should
Aaron, they talk about Nog, they talk about Aron Eisenberg all the time.
Yeah.
When he's not in episodes.
I think the five that I'm keeping track of lately is Nog, Rom, Keiko, Jake, and Molly. You know, later on it'll be Lita as well. And so this was a NAM for Cirroc, which brings his unofficial total up to 3. Nog has 2, Molly has 2. Keiko also got one, which is her 4th, because Miles is always going, Keiko, whatever, and Rom has 2. But anyway, so there was a mention at the beginning where Chief and Sisko are talking, and they were talking about you.
I remember that. And
then Chief says, I'll have him up to his elbows in thorium grease. Anyway, so that's in your future.
I guess so. He's taking a liking to me. So I think because that was last episode, I was honest with him most of the time. So,
but that was with the guy that wasn't even him anyway. So maybe it's like this subliminal thing that he just.
Yeah, maybe. But it actually, even the other guy still had some of his characteristics. Like he knew stuff that the real O'Brien would know. So
totally knew everything.
Yeah.
And we do want to mention that Melisa is joining us. It's a very special 50th episode for us. And we have a very special guest, Melisa, wearing her
the 50th.
Yeah, wearing her awesome Captain Nog Forever.
Captain Nog Forever. Awesome.
Yeah.
What did you think about the episode?
Of this episode?
Just any episode.
Any episode.
50th, anything goes, whatever you want.
Any one of the 50. Any one of the 50.
Well, no. I had a lot of thoughts about this episode. And as I was telling you before we started, this episode triggers me for many, many reasons. So
let's hear them all.
Yeah, no, we have to get to them because I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of stuff in this episode that's kind of like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And they touch on so many issues when they go through this episode. You start to say, okay, that's cool, and then you're like, well, that's not so cool.
And just before we do that, I do want to also mention that it only got a 6.8 on IMDb. So it's definitely one of the lower rated ones, but I thought it was really smart for all the reasons you guys are about to mention, I think right now. I was impressed with the writing. I think it just got low ratings because it wasn't super exciting. It wasn't serialized or like influence anything later on, but I thought it was really smart.
Yeah. And I also think that maybe because I was angry a lot of the time in this episode.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's why there was a low rating, but it's a good episode because it made me angry. So if you look at it that way.
I don't start off angry, Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I start off thinking, oh, wow, this is a cool thing. Like this is, it kind of, I wrote down like kind of like a hippie commune.
Right.
It was like, there's a lot of those in Northern California, people just kind of want to live off the grid and they choose to kind of have this kind of communal lifestyle of living. Right. And it's a common thing even today. It's not unusual. So in the beginning, I started to think, oh, that's what it is, right? It's like these people want to be off the grid and they want to grow their own foods and find medicines and cures for diseases by studying their environment.
By the way, it's not unusual. Is that Tom Jones, I think?
Yeah.
It is. Yes.
Okay.
It is Tom Jones.
Yeah.
Okay. Please.
So that's what I got. I got like a lot of that, So in the beginning, it really, my guard was down and I was trying to accept it for what it appeared to be, which was like this really cool lifestyle, right?
Right. And it would have been a cool lifestyle had everyone participating in that lifestyle had a choice to be there and participate in the lifestyle.
Right. With all the facts.
Exactly. Yeah. With all the facts. She essentially kidnapped a whole group of people and stranded them on an island or on a planet purposefully. I mean, how wrong is that? So wrong. And then punish them if they don't follow her ideals. So, and I think it's a smart look into how cults start. And also, it's also an interesting look into Stockholm Syndrome, I think. There's a little bit of that there too, because they end up defending her even though she betrayed them to get them to where they are. So
yeah, and we'll cover the end a little bit more later, but did you guys notice all the subtleties? I mean, the most obvious one though was the symbolism of the uniform. First thing she says is, "Why don't you take off that uniform?" And then later on she says, "Oh, why don't you take off that uniform? It gets real hot in the fields." And then it's like, "Oh boy, you sure are hot. Why don't you get out of that uniform?" Another lady comes around and says, "Take off that uniform and I'll rub this oil all over your body."
Yeah.
The whole thing was very symbolic though, and we understand what that meant. That meant, kick off your shoes and stay a while and get that Starfleet mentality out of you, because we're not letting you go.
Right.
Yeah, I did notice that. I thought it was one of the interesting, things inside of the episode. There were so many nuggets in here that was really, it was rich with symbolism and, things that remind us of what's going on. But one of the things that I picked up was when they came and they reached this group of people, the first few questions that they had to ask. So one was about fashion, right? So what are the ladies wearing over there, right? She wanted to know. So she could...
Let's ask Melisa that too, by the way. I did have a question about that. When she said, what are the fashions like? And they said, oh, the dresses are longer lately. She said, oh, I'm going to have to alter all my dresses. So does that mean, so you can alter a dress to make it longer? I thought you can only alter it to make it like shorter or tighter.
Yeah, the only way to alter a dress to make it longer is add more fabric. And there's going to be a noticeable seam if you add more fabric. So there's not really a good way to make your dress longer unless you're...
Yeah. You'd make Garrick very proud right now.
But it was funny because like that's like she wanted to know like what people were wearing. I thought that was interesting that that's, culturally, like if you've been in a time capsule and you wake up out of nowhere and you what would be the questions that you'd have to ask, right? The other one was about sports. Who won the game? Who
won the soccer game?
Yeah.
Okay, that was pretty generic. Who won the soccer game? What are you even talking about, dude? The one?
Well, but can you imagine though? But just think about it. Let's say like here comes the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. Let's say some way that you're like kidnapped in another planet and you missed this Super Bowl, right? That you've been looking forward to and you want to know. And it's in your head. It's the last thing that, that you never really got to see.
And then 10 years later, I go, who won the Super Bowl? And they go, some expansion team. And I'm like, no, the one.
No, the Super Bowl from 2020. Yeah. The 49ers. Did the 49ers win? So it was kind of like, it was like that. And I almost sensed that those guys there were probably having a debate or argument about their two favorite teams and what the outcome was. So I thought that was funny. The sports question came up, the fashion question came up, and also the ships. So the other engineer that was on that planet, he was like, so what kind of ship was that you guys were flying, And O'Brien's like, yeah, they just invented those a few years ago, these runabouts.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a cool little thing that they inserted.
What kind of ship it was, or what mission it was? Was it a colonial ship, or what is it? I mean, were these people all just like families together so that they don't have anybody to miss back home? I mean, what was?
That's not what I got the impression of. It sounded like she planned this, researched this planet, saw that it was sustainable, saw that she was booked a journey on something, and figured.
Yeah, but so that ship was just like a travel ship to go somewhere or something?
It looked like that's what I got out of it. Was like it was a cruise ship. Like, hey guys, you want to go to Hawaii?
Yeah. Right. But then it makes you wonder, don't they have like family back at home that they'd like to go see?
And that was the other part where it was like, how completely narcissistic to not even ask if, Miles has a wife. You don't know if he has a kid. You don't know if Benjamin has a kid or family at home, and you want to strand him here because you want to make a point about your own philosophy. I mean, come on. How selfish.
You're right.
Really selfish. Not even that, think of the families, no, let alone the technology. The technology is the least of the thing that comes into it. They have family at home, for all you know.
Poor Jake's can be up to his elbows in thorium grease. Somebody help him out.
Well, no, because Miles is with his dad. So
you're right.
I get to miss out on that. But no, there was the other thing that like jumped out at me is when she said, "Oh yeah, 2 able-bodied men are here. That's just what we need." And I was thinking, what are you trying to build? Like, what do you need? why couldn't all these guys together couldn't figure it out? You needed 2 more able-bodied men to do whatever it was that you're
able-bodied men, and then what do they have them do? Pulling weeds in the field, by the way. And then I did find it a little confusing when the guy was like to Chief, he's like, did he say to Chief or Sisko? But he says, wow, you've really got a knack for this. For pulling roots out of the ground. Boy, oh boy, you are.
You're good at massaging corn stalk.
I'm not touching that one.
But you know what I also liked? There was a moment there when Sisko was going back into that box, and he looked over at O'Brien like, "Don't you stop what I'm about to do. I know you got a problem with it, and I know what's your instinct, what you naturally want to do, but don't you do it. I have my own, game plan, and I'm going to stick to it. So don't stop what I'm about to do." Mm-hmm. And they gave him that look, right?
It was one of those that was the moment where I thought of you for sure, Cirroc, was because it was a very clear analogy or metaphor for like the silent protests. You know what I mean? Like the peaceful protest of like, is reminiscent of all, the American history of the last, 100 years. Also remind me very strongly of Gandhi and how he would have his fasting protests. But I'm sure you guys, when you saw that, it conjured up memories of a lot of things.
Yeah. No, it was a huge statement.
Yeah, that's what got me too, Melissa. It was the racial implications of slavery and what we've gone through it with Black people in America, with slavery and then Jim Crow,
and putting them in a box, man,
and putting them in the box and lynchings and all of this mistreatment of like less than human treatment that we've received. And it was a complete flashback of that when I watched this episode. Mm-hmm. It was disturbing in that same kind of a way. Mm-hmm. And Sisko was courageous to try to make his point by fighting it, by showing how bad it is, by letting it being done to him. It's kind of like when the police dogs were attacking peaceful protesters. You got to see who the real aggressor was, who was the real violent person, right? Who really wanted to destroy and cause havoc. It was the people that were beating him and dogs were biting them, not the guys who were there trying to eat or find a way for their rights and, peacefully protest. So that was one of the main things that hit home for me watching this episode.
Yeah.
And
Well, and it was a huge testament to his character too, in that no matter what she did to him, he made a promise to Starfleet and to his son not to give up going home. But the uniform became a symbol of that promise. And just because it got hard, he's not going to turn his back on it. He could have easily said, "Oh yeah, I'll put this clothes on, wink, wink, and then I'll drink the water." It's showed his character and what a strong human being he is.
And he kept that uniform on when he went back into that hot box too.
Yeah.
Hot box.
And also, as just an evolution of his perception, when he got there, he also was welcoming to the idea. So he didn't initially come in with this negative thought, looking down on them and their lifestyle. He was open to it. He actually started reading the journals and say, wow, this is really good stuff here. Her philosophy is deep. So he was trying to buy into what was being sold, right? He was giving it the benefit of the doubt until he realized who was in charge, right? It kind of reminded me of the book Animal Farm.
Yes, that was such a good book.
Right.
Read that in years. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we're going to make these rules. And then the pigs start breaking the rules. And they're like, well, yeah, everybody except the pigs, right?
Right.
Yes.
So, and to me, it was like, yeah, we're all here. We're here equally. Everybody has to chip in, except I'm the boss and I make the rules and I decide who goes in the box and what the punishment is. And basically, right?
Right.
Kind of just sounds like everything always, right?
Right. Well, yeah. It's an ongoing thing that we fight against. And I wrote down freedom on here. And it's like, this is what freedom really means, right? Freedom is to have the information, all the information, and then to make the choice.
Right.
Right. And the choice not being made for you. And so that's what's so precious about being here in this country, and what's special about the idea of freedom is that we,
That's a good point. The lady Alexis, I believe was her name. She was acting as if she were a liberator, and she was bringing them freedom. In fact, she said kind of a rude thing to the guy at the end when she's like, "And Stephen, you would have been in jail for years if I didn't." That was such
that's right. You were a bum at work.
You belong in jail. Look what I did for you.
You're ugly. Nobody would have married you, and and like basically just like the worst.
She pooped on him.
Well, yeah, way to tear down your people, and you're not giving them to live up to their human potential because you took the right of choice away from them. So, I mean, they're part of that living up to that human integrity or human potential is letting people have that choice, and you can't control that choice for anyone. And it's really arrogant of her to think that she had all the answers for everyone else, and that these people in this community wouldn't have been capable enough of success without her, and without her trapping them on this planet. Right. I mean, come on.
And get
over yourself.
And that's like the combination of both of your points. The points are that she's acting like she's giving them all this freedom, but really she's taken away the very fundamental first freedom of everything, which is to choose, your freedom of choice. And so she wasn't a liberator. She was whatever.
An oppressor.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also highlight her acting in this. I don't know the actress's name that played this Alexis character, but she was good to make me hate her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She's probably a wonderful woman and, you know, a great actress.
Gail Strickland.
Gail Strickland. Shout out to Gail Strickland because I had a contempt for her by the end of this, right?
Yes.
I literally wanted to see somebody smash her with a rock. So,
or Iran.
Yeah. So she was doing great acting there. So let's just, and I think that as well, I wanted to say that Avery Brooks' performance in this was fantastic. It was just, I'm surprised it wasn't really rated higher because of his performance. I thought he sold a lot of different things. For example, his weariness and tiredness from working in the field. I bought that. The scene where he crawls back into the cage, I bought the intensity and the emotion in that moment. And I also bought his analysis of her and how he was, you know, going back and forth. Yeah, the psychoanalysis of her. There was a line that she said to him. She's like, "You'll get used to it." And he says, "Hopefully, I won't be here long enough, so I don't have to get used to it."
Right. That was already the little tug of war going on right there, where she's like, "Hey, you'll stay right." He's like, "Don't count on it."
Yeah.
No.
And I like that. I really like that. But they did also talk about concepts that are important to think about. One was, they said we had to abandon our dependence on technology, right? And we are so dependent on technology. Sometimes we you know, use it as a crutch.
There was something there for sure, yeah.
And there's a little bit of truth there, right, about our reliance on technology and, you know, how much
especially
we do it.
Considering this was 25 years ago, this is another one of those themes that we talk about where it's even more true and more accurate and relevant today than it was 25 years ago. We're going to go to a quick break in just a minute here. I also wanted to ask you guys what you thought of the structure of it, because we're always kind of talking about how it's an O'Brien episode or it's an Odo episode, but this one was a little different. They were often pairs. And real quick, a couple of the trivioids from the beginning. Vinod plays with sharp objects. That's when they introduced him. He said, "Oh, and the guy that plays with sharp objects is Vinod over here." And I don't know if you caught it, but Dax did some crazy rope stuff with the Hopi. She said, "Oh, I used to do some really weird. I used to do some really crazy rope stuff with a Hopi or something like that." We're like, the way she said it.
Oh yes, she implied something.
You caught that, right, Melisa?
Yes, I did.
Oh, I didn't catch it. I wish I caught that.
I was like,
man.
oh.
Oh yes.
Oh man, I missed that reference right there.
All right.
Now this is okay. We'll pick it up on it.
We'll pick it up in like 5 seconds. We'll be right back with the seventh rule.